Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight and taking this little walk through bead photography here. I've been a lamp worker for 15 years and I definitely struggled with photography. I bought expensive cameras. I have a Canon T3i. Before that, I had a Sony. I mean, I really tried to put a lot of time and effort into it, and I struggled quite a bit. So my dad and my dad's side of the family have a background in photography, and the first suggestion that they ever gave me was using grayscale. So that's one of the things that I kind of use as the foundation of all of my photography, regardless of what device I'm using. And it really has seemed to help with glass, especially because glass is reflective and refractive when it comes to light. So it absorbs light from several angles. So it's very difficult. So we're going to be focusing on smartphone photography, and I have two devices that I use, and we're going to do kind of a quick change when we jump from the iPhone to the Android device. So we're going to start off on the iPhone, and the kind of cool thing is most of your phones that you're going to have right now already come with everything that you're going to need, whether it's the point and shoot capabilities. You don't have to buy additional lenses. They're really designed to take photographs from pretty much any angle, including macro. So that's really what we're going to be doing, is focusing on macro. Glass beads are small. You want to capture the detail without sacrificing any kind of clarity. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of show you a little bit about how things look when they're on your camera. So if you notice, I have a gray background here, and this is my grayscale. I do have some others that I use, and I can show you guys through here. I'm going to change the background, and I'm going to use the red and orange glass rods. These are both translucent rods, so you can see they let light through, but they're really pretty. And you can see even on these mobile devices like the iPad, it picks up the color pretty nice. So this is my board I use almost 100% of the time. But if I'm looking for something cleaner, and by cleaner, I mean it doesn't have glitter and resin on it, because it's lived in my studio for so long, I have background pages that kind of mimic that wood gray look. This is a much lighter gray, but you'll see the minute it goes on, the hue shifts just slightly from what it was when it was against this gray background. So you'll see right away the color changes. And that's because of how the light is refracting through the glass. So that gives you an idea. And I will go through now. This one is the closest one to my board. So it's the one I kind of default to when I have to change backgrounds. And again, it's really grayscale all by itself in multi-tones. So it's really good at highlighting the color of the glass bead that you're photographing. So that just kind of goes over that. And then the rest of these, ignore all of the doodles on the side, because you will never see any of this. When you're focusing your camera, you'll only hit the inside of that ring. But again, it's a lighter tone of this background here. So if you needed that light background and you didn't want to go white, this would kind of be what you would aim for. And then this one, I thought I would throw in there because all wood grain is not created equal, or all gray is not created equal. This almost picks up like a pink hue when you set something on the back of it. So you could take something like this bead here, and it almost gets washed out, and you don't get the true color of the bead from that. So just kind of some examples there for that. And I'm going to remove those out of the way. So when you're thinking of photographing your work, you want to try to get as much detail as possible. And I like to start off with
Michelle,
really...
Do you want people to ask questions as you go along there? Because somebody just asked some questions about the paper.
Sure.
Juliet, you had a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, that whole explanation there, are you just explaining what it's better or not good to put your beads on for taking pictures, or does that color of the paper affect your settings in the phone? I guess I'm just confused.
It does. It does. So the paper, it kind of gives you an idea, because not everybody's going to have access to the exact same background that I had. That's why I kind of go over grayscale, because again, gray means a lot of things to different people. So I wanted to show some examples of what a gray background looks like and how it can affect your color.
So you're not talking about taking pictures in black and white and grayscale?
No.
Okay, that's what had me confused.
Yes, this is more
Okay.
of using the concept of grayscale photography, which is where you're using that to, I don't know if you've ever been to a professional photography studio, but they put a gray card up in the corner. And when the camera is focusing, it's allowing the camera to pick up the true color of its subject. So essentially that's what we're doing here. And because we're getting in so close and we're doing macro, it really helps to have your background already that gray color. And it helps to just pick up the true color. I used to use like a light box, and I used to have the white background, the black background, and it doesn't actually give you that true tone. And yellow and oranges and reds were notoriously difficult to photograph on a white background. I just never had any luck with that. So my dad gave me the tip to try a gray or neutral background, and immediately I saw a change. And that was with, I think, the iPhone. That might have been like 7 iPhones ago, like 6 iPhones ago. And immediately I noticed an improvement in it. It even mattered when I was using the Canon T3i. But it's just a general, it seems to give me a much better quality color. So when you're relating it back to glass, you're trying to get across to the person who's looking at it what you see in real life. And you want to get as close to that as possible. And that's where it gets hard. Glass is not easy to photograph. It reflects things. So I don't know if you can see here, but on the top of my bead, you can just make out the little reflections of my 2 overhead lights that I have. You can pick up anything. You'll see your reflection if you're not careful, and depending on the angle at which you're holding your camera. So it's going to be a challenge at first, but when you get used to that, you're going to be able to portray something to the person looking at it, and it's going to create a lot more interest. So I think we should probably just dive right into what it looks like on the iPhone. So if we can do the top view, I guess this
Michelle,
would probably be the best.
Jerry wanted to know where you buy that paper.
Okay, so that is, hang on, I'm going to grab it. I have everything kind of precariously spaced here, so forgive me. I want to show you, this came from a paper pack from Michael's. 90% of these did. And it is, I don't know if it's the one right down here. Nope, that's the I don't know what it's called. It's Recollections, and it's called Marsh Flower. And if you look through it, it's got the, hang on, let's get to it. So it's got the wood grains, the wood looks. But you can go to Hobby Lobby or any, like there's that piece right there.
Yeah.
That I
any
used.
artistic supply store.
Any store where you can find scrapbook paper, because this is heavyweight scrapbook paper. I wouldn't recommend using anything that you could see through. So like copy paper, even if you got it in a decent weight, might not work so well. The thinner scrapbook paper, this is more of a cardstock weight, and it allows you to not have light come through the paper. So I get it from there. I know that there is somebody who sells chalkboard poster board, and it might be Hobby Lobby, and it looks like the background of this, which would be like on your dark gray, excuse the glare, I apologize for that. And it looks like this background here, but the whole sheet looks like that without any white decoration. So that would also be an option to use if you were struggling to find good scrapbook paper. And again, I like the wood grain look just because it adds interest to your photography without having to put a bunch of props in. I find when you get into props, it takes away from the beads, especially because they're so small, that if I were to put in something like a seashell like this, I mean, you're looking at the scale and all you see is seashell. It's kind of taking your eye away from the bead. So the interest of the background kind of helps draw your eye to the bead versus another type of a prop. So the iPhone is going to be probably your easiest device to use because it really doesn't have a lot of custom features. And I found that to be good and bad. So I'm just going to turn my phone on. I apologize here. I had it set up. It goes to sleep on me. So I'm going to try to center this as best as I can. And if you notice right now, I'm in photo mode. And this is important because if you're in portrait mode or one of these other kind of fun little things, you're not going to get the clarity of the picture. Portrait mode is dependent on how far away from your subject you are. And so we want to stay in photo mode. And it likes to focus on an object at a decent distance. And then if you need to get closer, you're going to use your fingers to zoom in. That way you don't lose the clarity. If you were to just get the phone closer to the subject, it would start to blur the subject out because the lens is not focusing well. A couple of other things that you want to make sure, especially when you're photographing under studio lights like this, which I can go over that in just a second. I probably should have done that first. I'm sorry. Is you want to make sure that your burst is turned off, which is these little concentric circles on the top right-hand corner. You want to make sure those are turned off. Otherwise, if you're trying to focus and get a shot, it's going to take like 37 pictures of the same thing. The other thing you want to make sure is that your flash is turned off, and that's going to be your top left-hand corner. And you can just hit that and toggle it back and forth. Same thing with your burst. You can hit that to toggle it on and off. So once you have it in, and because you're being so close, I don't know if you can see, I'm going to try to bring this camera back if we can. If you see how I'm resting my hands, I'm using my hands as my tripod. So that's my support. And I'm close enough to my subject that I can get almost all of this detail. And if you want to go back to the overhead view so they can see how much of it takes up the frame, then you're just going to kind of apply some of the principles of photography. I don't have this dead center like that. I'm kind of shooting up and off to the side. It helps draw your eye to what you want to see versus maybe a color flaw or something along that lines. So I literally have it where I want it, and I'm going to shoot the picture. And that is it. So now we come to, it looks good, right? It looks really, really good, but you're probably like, okay, so I can point and shoot. What am I doing differently that, you know, what are you doing differently that I'm not? I use full daylight spectrum light, whether that means I'm using ambient light from a window. And I do, I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to move my front view camera up a little bit here. These are daylight spectrum bulbs, but I can move this whole setup. You can see how small it is. I can move this board wherever I need to get the light that comes down. And because I don't need to worry about the color balance because of the gray board, I'm only really worried about my lighting. So, and the burst and flash, yes, I saw that comment. So moving to the lighting, these are OT lights, and they are full spectrum daylight bulbs. And I have 2 of them. You want to kind of create high noon so you don't have harsh shadow. If I were to take one of these lights away, do you see the shadow that comes over to the side of the bead? You would pick that up in your photography. So when I put the light back on it, you can see that it greatly reduces that overhead shadow. Now, if I wanted to, and I had the setup, the space, I could add another light right about here, and that would create that third light source that would completely eliminate this shadow, completely eliminate it. So the other thing you want to keep in mind is, I mean, we're looking, it's completely dark outside right now, and yet I'm able to get a photo clear enough that it looks like I'm photographing pretty much in the daylight. So that's why it's crucial to have this. Now, it gets a little bit different when we move into the other camera on the Android, because you're able to change some of those settings. I can't read all of the text. I'm not sure how I can see the comments, Kelly. Let me look on my laptop and see if I can pull it up. Okay, please review the upper settings again. Okay, so these...
Okay, I was just saying that I'm trying to respond to the comments, and I realize I don't have a headset on, so my typing is louder than usual. People wanted to know about their specific phones, and I think in general, everybody has similar features on their phone, but your buttons might not be in the same place as what Michelle was demonstrating. So
Yes.
this isn't exactly a tutorial on how to use your particular type of phone, but it's more of what's capable with the iPhone and the Android phones in general. So you'll have to look at your specific phone instructions for where the buttons might be located for you.
Yeah, so the important thing would be to just make sure that that feature, and so I used to have an iPhone 7 Plus, and it did have the burst feature, and it was just in a different spot, and it could be in a different spot on the 8 as well. So wherever that feature is, you just want to make sure it's turned off. Because a lot of times when you're focusing like this on your subject, which would be your beads, and you accidentally hold the shutter down too long because you're holding your hand steady, if the burst is on, it's going to recognize that extra pause on your phone as it wants to use the burst and take multiple pictures, and then it's just kind of a headache, and it's going to affect your autofocus. Just
we can't see your hand or your phone in any view.
There we go.
Now.
Sorry about that. And then the flash, that has always been somewhere in your frame. I think every iPhone I've ever used, and I started on an iPhone 4 when I first started mobile photography, that has always been somewhere on your actual camera screen. So when you're in frame, that is somewhere on the front. So you won't have to go into settings to find that no matter what iPhone you're on. So hopefully that helps explain that. But really the key to using your phone properly is your lighting and your gray board. So I'm going to show you another kind of, this is more of a technique to getting a good shot of something. So let's say you're struggling a little bit with your lighting, or all you have is a sunny window, which I wish we could maybe redo this and I can film me doing this during the day so I can show you what I mean. Because I get just as good of quality photos when I'm photographing using actual daylight instead of daylight bulbs. But I'm going to come in front here, and I think the front view, I have it set up to where I can now photograph directly in front of my subject, so I'm not overhead. And this can make colors just a little richer. And I see my green, for example, in these petals on the beads. I see that green a little bit more clearly and a little bit more saturated than when I'm photographing from overhead. So I always try to include multiple angles. And all you want to make sure of is that you're not blocking your light source. Because if you were to block your light source, like you were leaning this way, I'm going to try to block it with my hand. You can see that me blocking my light source, well, it's not actually going to work because I don't have enough coverage. But if you block your light source, you're going to get shadows and things like that. So it's just more of a perspective. So you want to make sure that you have your subject in perspective. And this kind of also brings me to a background. If you're concerned about photographing like this because you can see your ambient background, that's where this piece of paper comes in. And I changed that out. That actually doesn't have to stay gray.
What piece of paper are you referring to, Michelle?
The one in the back that I showed that had the chalkboard. Oh, let's back up a little bit. Hang on.
Okay. Yeah, somebody had just asked about that. And in case you haven't noticed, Michelle doesn't have a tendency to breathe in between her statements very much. So if you've got a question, just barge on in there with your questions. Otherwise, you're not going to get them out.
Nope. Okay. And I don't think you guys could see the front view there for very well, because I just had to click something on my phone and it finally came back into focus. So this background page here, I changed that out, and like for Christmas time, I had something like that set up, and it doesn't really change anything because my background is gray. So this is just if you are worried about your ambient area, and I use that when I'm taking frontal photography like this, so that I just get my subject in there. And again, I want to use my zoom feature like this. I don't want to get closer to my subject. That's going to help me keep the clarity. So Kelly, if you want, I'm going to try to switch out. If you can turn off my camera view for the front just for now, I'm going to try to switch the phones out so that we can show what the Android can do. And this might take a few seconds. So I apologize, guys. We couldn't figure out a good way to do this without the interruption.
We're just going to stare at the back of your head and your ceiling. So you're not getting that embarrassing
I was
bum
gonna say,
shot
I got
that you're
some
worried
pretty
about.
vinyl on the wall there. And well, the top view I think should still work as well. I have to get actually into the Zoom meeting on this one. That was the problem. Because while
you're doing that, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Is there a setting in the iPhone to set the white balance and tell whether you're in studio lights or outdoor?
No.
Okay.
And that's
why I couldn't find it.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't exist. I did research that. I had actually researched that before because when I switched from my Android to sorry, it's telling me that I can't join on this phone. I don't know why. Hang on. It says it's disabled. Is that something on your end, Kelly? Okay.
No, it's not.
Okay, let's try this again and see if I can do it.
Maybe you just don't have
I'm in my app.
Video sharing or all that stuff. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen of the equipment that she's using. Just once again, there were some words there. You guys can have another chance to look at that while she's setting up.
Technical difficulties. 621. Okay, let's try this. Okay. Okay, so we'll kind of have to rename that device as well.
Okay. That one's the Android, right?
No, this is now the iPhone.
Okay.
Okay. Turned my volume all the way down on that. Okay. Okay, here we go. So I just want to make sure we have the same views. So when I go in here and I'm going to, let's see, can I do this? Actually, I can do that while I'm in the meeting. So let's see if we can toggle back and forth. Okay, so now we have, this is a Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. This phone's about a year and a half old, give or take. And I'm going to try to get out of the glare of that light. And this has many more capabilities than your iPhone. So we're going to start off with what we don't want on because Samsung loves to be a selfie phone. It's designed for vlogging, things like that. So you're going to want to turn off any of the beautifying things because what it's going to do is put a nice fake coating all over everything and you're not going to get detail very well. It's designed to take the wrinkles out of your face, but it also takes the detail out of your beads. So one of the things you can do is come up here to this little magic wand here and make sure that your beauty is off. And again, this is going to look different on your device, across Android devices. This is just what the Galaxy 10 looks like. I'm not sure what we're on right now for Galaxies, so it could be anything. And then you just want to toggle out of it. Make sure you don't have any weird filters on because it could change how everything looks. So again, you're going to want to make sure your flash is off. That's a good thing because unfortunately, when flash is on your Android, it's not like the Apple where it can auto detect whether you have enough light. If you have that actually turned on, it will put your flash through in addition to whatever light you have. So you definitely want to make sure on your Android devices that you have your flash turned off because it doesn't auto detect as well as the iPhone does. So you want to make sure anything with this magic wand, anything is turned off because you don't want to, basically you don't want to edit your photos yet. And then you want to go to your cog and into your settings and make sure that your screen optimizer is off because this is kind of like the beauty feature, but it almost adds a grainy texture to everything, trying to make it hyper realistic. So you want to make sure that that's off. And everything else kind of stays. I always have my HDR on and it does say rich tone. And what I noticed without it is it would, especially if my light settings were a little low, and again, I'm referring to using daylight, it would not allow me the same quality if I didn't have the HDR on. I turned off tracking autofocus because you might think that you're turning off autofocus, But what it's designed to do is focus on something moving. So like if you're doing sports photography or trying to catch your kid doing something cute, but you want to make sure that's off, because anytime you move your hand slightly to attempt to get a good angle while you're focusing, it's going to refocus on wherever you're moving, and you're going to lose the focus on your subject. So you just want to make sure that that's turned off. And funny enough, when I first got this phone, that was defaulted to on. So I had to go in and really play with the settings. But as you can see, there's already more to it than with an iPhone. So I'm going to get out of that. That's all you need in there. And then we're going to move down to these 3 little trees right here. And
Michelle, could you go just a little slower? You're kind of familiar with everything, but it's a little fast.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So is there anything I need to back up and show?
I think people were just trying to keep up with what you were saying. You were talking fast and jumping to the next thing just a little quick. So if you could just pause in between them a little bit.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. So if I don't need to go back to that, we'll move into our trees down here. So this is how the Android approaches macro photography. And I will bring beads into focus here. And what you're going to do is it's centered right now, and this is focusing on the distance that the camera actually is from the subject. If I click the single leaf, it's going to zoom me in and get me closer. If I were to do what I did with the iPhone and use my fingers to zoom it in, which I can do, it would blur out and not give me that crisp line that I get by using the macro feature. So this is your friend. You want to use this instead of always start in the middle to give me a good idea of my focus and to make sure that my subject is in focus. And then once I have that, then I switch over to my macro. Now, I know that there is a similar, now Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, you have a Note 9, correct?
Yes, I do.
And you were able to see the symbols as trees as well, correct?
I was able to. Are we locked up?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought maybe so. I asked the question and then I didn't hear
anything. I'm sorry.
So.
Yes, I was able to see the trees as well.
So in this regards, in terms of continuity, you should see these same symbols. And I'm pretty sure across the Android platform, it's going to be similar. If you have an older phone, I can't vouch for these settings. So you, again, would want to familiarize yourself with your phone and make sure that you are looking at what I'm looking at. I'm in photo mode, so I'm not in any special mode, just like I was on the iPhone. I just want to make sure I'm in here. Now, we can take this a step further and we can go, let's say you really struggle with your lighting and you know, for some reason you're just not getting it.
Wayne, were you attempting to ask a question?
Yeah, I can't see.
I was just going to say, I have the 20, which I thought was the newest, and they just came out with the 21. So I can go the other extreme. The newer ones do have the trees.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
I don't know if that helps, but
thank you.
It does, because the Android's a larger, it encompasses so many more devices, because Android is the platform. And unlike Apple, where an iPhone is an iPhone is an iPhone, I mean, you could have an Android device that's from LG or Google Pixel or, oops, sorry about that, or it spans multiple manufacturers. So that's why I can only tell you what's on this device. And then if people want, I mean, if people want to comment somewhere, Kelly, maybe you can confirm this or deny this. When we have this posted, if we want to create a file and people can say, hey, I have this camera and whatever, I mean, I don't know if you want to do that or not. That way people can chime in with what they have.
To answer some people's questions, yes, this is being recorded. It will be shared with both the Firebirds and the Dragons. This is a collaborative effort, so it is being recorded for both. We'll do our best to answer your questions. We're just trying to give you an overview of what's possible, so you have a jumping off point to see that these things exist possibly on your phone, and you know to go look for them. We can't claim to know every phone, but other people in the group may have your same phone, and so we can all help each other. Now, somebody keeps asking me iPhone questions, so can you guys hold off on your iPhone questions until we get out of the Samsung, please?
And I can go back to the iPhone.
Okay,
I can
you.
definitely do that. Okay, so now we have another tab. So let's just say you're lighting or you don't have OT lights, because they can be expensive. That was my biggest purchase for my setup, was my tripod for some photography and then my lights. Each one of my OT lights without a sale price was $60. So it is a little pricey. It's going to be your biggest investment, really, aside from your phone. So let's say you're just using your ambient light from a nice bright window or a good sunny porch, and you need a little bit more help. You have something called the More feature. And when you click this, let's see, it's not responding. Okay, you pull up all of these options, and I want to make sure, I want to see if it focuses. On my view, the letters are blurred out. So I'll try to explain it by giving directionals. So your top left-hand corner is a button called Pro, and it allows you to adjust several settings. So we'll come back to that in a second. The next one that I thought was really interesting, especially when I was having difficulty photographing some of the reds and the oranges, was the food setting. So I'm going to click on the food setting. And do you see how it just focuses on that center, kind of blurs out around it? Do you see how brilliant the color of the beads is? Now, that's actually very close to the actual color of the beads without being over dramatic, I should say. So if I were to take this red rod and put it in the frame, I'm going to take this out, and it focuses on it. It really gives you that bright strawberry red. So if you're struggling, sometimes that food setting just by default picks up the colors a little nicer. There's not really anything else that you do to it. It just might help you if you're struggling with a particular color. So I'm going to back out of that, and we're going to come back to More. And we're going to go back to that Pro. Now, when you click on it, you're going to see all of these white squares. I'm going to put some beads back into the frame here. And that's kind of focusing right now. So I tried to get these settings all the way set up, but I can show you what happens when we adjust them. So this is going to be closer to what a professional camera would have. And you have your ISO, you have your aperture, you have autofocus, and white balance. Now, these are features you cannot adjust on the iPhone. So that might actually answer some of those iPhone questions. None of these are adjustable on my phone for iPhone. Could be on another one, not on mine. So if we come in here to ISO, so this is like, if you remember, you know, this deals with your light. So I typically, for indoor photography, I keep it on 800. That seems to be the best setting for me. And then I want to make sure that my F balance is somewhere around this number. If I were to go even a little bit.
What is that number, since we can't read it?
It's 1/1000.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm probably not using these terms correctly. Hang on, let me get this back on it. Okay, and they're just little tick marks. I'm going to see if I can bring that up to the camera a little bit better. They're just little tick marks. And when you see that number, now what you're really paying attention to, just like in professional photography using a point and shoot camera, is you're really kind of messing with that as you're looking at your subject through the viewfinder. So you're always going to want to let that help you, because again, your lighting might be different than mine. So this number might be slightly adjusted for you. I leave standard alone. I've never had to mess with that. Autofocus I leave on because I don't even want to pretend that I have steady enough hands to use it in manual mode. And then we're going to come over to white balance. So white balance is, again, it's that spectrum of light that you're seeing that helps you see the true color. So we're using daylight bulbs. We're using the white balance feature here, which will help us create that perfect balance of color. So if we were to come in here, let's say I adjust this up a little higher, it's pulling all my blue light out. So I come back down here, and as you can see, I get closer, I get more blue light. Now, too far in one direction, and that's all you're seeing is your blue light. And it's going to really adjust out. Now, in some lighting situations, you need to go down that far in order to get that proper balance. But for me, in my indoor lighting using the OT lights, I'm able to stay at about 5,300. I don't know what the K stands for. It's like kilo something. And I'm able to stay at that. And then I come into my subject. Now here's where it differs from your regular mode. There is, if you notice, there's no macro on here. I can't just click a button and make it bigger or smaller. So I do need to come in, and I need to come in with my 2 fingers, and I spread them apart like this so that I can enlarge the screen. And then I adjust my camera slightly by moving it up or down until it focuses. Once it's focused, then I can hit the shutter and it'll take a decent picture. So I'm going to bring that picture up onto the screen. We are out of camera mode right now. And as you can see, it captured the color very, very well. It is probably the closest to the board color that you're going to get. And that was a decent picture. So I can come back out here. Excuse me, I'm going to have to get back into camera mode. There we go. So those are going to be what you play with. Now, another thing that I kind of bridge with this is I make sure my ratio size is also correct. Again, the Android cameras tend to be much more social media friendly. So make sure you're on a 1-to-1 ratio. I found that if I was in full, I didn't get, a lot of this ended up cropping out the wrong way when I needed to adjust it to make sure it fit on platforms like Facebook and things like that. So I prefer to shoot in 1-to-1 ratio. And that seems to give me a better quality picture when I upload it to social media sites. So that's just on there. So that's pretty much it for the Android part of this. As you can see, even if I come in, I'm going to show you the angle again for the frontal photography. It's pretty much the same thing. This is in Pro. I can enlarge it just slightly if I want to get in just a little bit closer.
Hold on a second there, Michelle. I don't seem to have your front camera anymore.
You don't? Why don't you?
I don't know.
I can see it on my screen.
I'm going to spotlight what I have marked as your front camera. Your front camera hasn't changed. Is that correct?
No, the front camera was what changed from the Android to the iPhone.
Okay, my bad.
Oh,
so sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so again, this is that frontal view where, remember, the light's coming from a slightly different direction now. And you can see how the clarity that you get. I'm going to toggle back and forth really quick just to show you in regular photo mode. Now, I don't know if you can see the difference in the color of my board, but if you notice in the regular mode, it has definitely gone slightly more blue light tinged than when I was in Pro mode. And I find that that's more common in indoor photography versus using true daylight. So again, what I would do here is I would hit my macro button and you can see it zooms in quite nicely. So I'm gonna just switch it back to the regular mode, come back up here. So that's really it in a nutshell. You're really focusing on making sure the settings that are already in your phone are optimized for the type of photography you're doing. And I'm not going to switch back to the iPhone because I think that's just going to mess things up. I can go back and I can answer any questions with an Android. Okay, that's good with the OT lights. I'm kind of looking down just to make, thank you, Kelvin Watts, thank you. And Okay, sorry, I'm reading through your comments, guys. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything like super, super important. Okay, so if that's it on the Android, I can go back to some of the Apple questions now. So on my iPhone.
Hold on one second. Let's just give folks a moment to digest what you said. I'm going to switch you over to the face view and see if anybody has any questions on an Android device before we talk more about the iPhone devices.
Excuse me for a second. I'm going to pull my chair up there and adjust that just slightly. Okay. So if anybody has any questions when it comes to, okay.
I just wanted to thank you because like Susan there, I had never noticed there were other modes on my phone. I never went to pro mode. I never clicked on any of those settings. I've had Samsung phones for a long time. I just point and shoot and just be glad if I get something that's in focus ever. So this was really eye-opening to me just talking to you yesterday.
This was, I will be honest, this was out of complete desperation. I'm a full-time lamp worker, so I sell what I make. And one of the things that was super important to me was to be able to portray the product the way that I could see it with my bare eye. And that's very difficult to do. And so really quick, I'll jump back to that in a second. So Diane asked about a light box. So that was my struggle. I had a light box. I bought that setup. I bought lights on the side. I bought everything to try to diffuse the light. And I was never able to get a good balance in my light for indoor photography. And living in South Florida, I know a lot of you guys are in Virginia, which by the way, that's my home state. I hail from Falls Church originally. But I know in Virginia, when it gets to be wintertime and it's kind of dark and dreary and it's snowing and doing all of that stuff, your ambient light might not be the greatest. And it seemed like even with daylight spectrum bulbs, I wasn't able to get that clear photography. Now, I wasn't trying back then using my phone. So I was trying with my Canon T3i and the Sony I had. So we can explore that, Kelly. Like we can set up a light box and we can come back to that and see if we have a change in that. So if people have that, I just know that I keep my lighting situation very open here. Yeah. I don't try to box anything in. So I'm relying on not only these OT lights, but I do, as you can see, I have ambient light in my room. It's a very well lit space. Right. So I'm really relying on the whole picture when I'm doing the photography. I felt like the light box was a little more constraining and it just didn't seem to help with glass photography. It might be good for other little knickknacks or things that don't reflect as much light. But it seemed for the glass that it was more trouble than it was worth.
Yeah, I also want to let folks know that when we did the description of this, we had kind of, we had combined the apps and the phone and the photo shoot all into one thing. And so Michelle's going to continue this in 2 weeks, our next Tech Tuesday, and she's going to show about all the different apps she uses on these phones. So your questions and things about the phones, we want to have those in our chat rooms on both groups so that we can compile those and be able to answer them. It looks like you just got another question in chat. Now, Juliet had a couple questions about iPhone and also her last one here. How do you deal with the light bulb reflections on the shiny glass? So before we jump to iPhone, does anybody else have any Android questions? And if you do, please unmute your mic and just ask.
Yeah.
Because there's 38 people in here and I can't see all of you on the screen. So just unmute and have a go at it or throw it out in the chat.
Yeah, Susan, I'm glad that you can give that input when it comes to the light box because again, I kind of gave up on it because I got so frustrated with the camera. LED
Michelle,
lighting.
Could you read those questions out so people that are just watching it?
Okay, so the first question is, or it's more of a statement. My new light box has worked really well for me with a gray backdrop in it, but I keep all the other lights in the room off. It has LED lighting built in and it is dimmable, but I can see that the pro settings on my phone will be amazing. So that's really good input because again, she is using that gray backdrop. So she's getting that optimized color setting. So she's not having to worry about color. And so really all she's focusing on is her lighting. Now you have to make sure that the LED lights you are using are full spectrum daylight LEDs because they're not always. LED can be warm, LED can be cool, and that Kelvin spectrum, it can vary on that greatly. So you just want to make sure that it's an actual true daylight LED, and those are kind of expensive. So when you're getting into that, if you're buying a light box on Amazon and it's only $30 or $40 with built-in lighting, you're probably not getting the good daylight spectrum bulbs. So back to Juliet. She says, how do you deal with the light bulb reflections on the shining glass? So I could put diffusers up on the lights, which would, in a pinch, that's parchment paper. Something that the light is going to be able to shine through, but it's just going to diffuse it slightly. That would completely eliminate that. But to be really honest, it doesn't seem to be an issue. It's not taking away from any detail for what I'm trying to focus on. Now, if you had a figural, something that was quite large, like a gnome or, you know, an animal style bead, you might want to look into putting a diffuser on there. And again, in a pinch on a light like this, I can bring this light into focus. This is what this OT light looks like. And I'll just put it down here. You could just take it and put that piece of parchment paper right over here and it would diffuse it just slightly. You don't want to block the light. You just want to make sure that it's not glaring on your subject. But that's one way to deal with that. And that's why with the light box, the sides of the light box are actually diffusing it. So that's kind of why if you're using a light box. I'm so glad, and I apologize with your name. I don't want to get it wrong. Is it Illa?
It's Illa.
So I'm glad I was able to help with the Android. I took a lot of time to figure this out. Yes, I do deal with sales primarily on my phone.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so uploading your photos, I think we can go into that a little bit. It's not really in the editing mode, so I use a couple of different features. Do you have a MacBook or an Apple compatible computer?
No.
This is for Jane Thompson. So Jane Thompson's question was, after the photos are taken, I use my laptop to process and I'm having trouble getting photos from the iPhone. So Jan, if you can type in your response to that and I can read that off to everybody. I just want to know if you're going Apple to Apple, if you're going Apple to another computer. And then that'll better help me give you the answer to that. Okay, Apple to PC. So what you're going to want to do is, and we can add this, Kelly, to the app section. I'll just go into this really quickly. You're going to want to download Google Photos. And you're going to want to download that onto your iPhone. It'll be perfectly fine on your iPhone. And you're going to want to set it to back up your camera roll. And that way, every picture you automatically take on your iPhone will go into your Google Photos. So then what you're going to do is you're going to come into your PC and you're going to open up Chrome. And then you're going to go to, on the top right-hand corner, you're going to see a whole bunch of little dots. And you're going to click on that and you're going to click on Google Photos. And we'll work on getting a document of some sort up for this and get this into part of our next presentation a little bit more in depth. So it's not just spoken, we can show it. And you're going to go into Google Photos, and from there, you're going to download the photo from Google Photos directly onto your device. And the picture quality should completely translate between the two devices. I've never had a single problem integrating from Google Photos, and it's an app that can be used across both platforms.
Michelle, does Google Photos work for videos as well?
Yes. Hang on one second. I apologize. I don't remember. Can this wait? Thank you. I don't remember. Sorry, my husband's having his own technical difficulties signing into a streaming device. So what, I apologize, Kelly. Can you back the question up? I'm sorry.
No, I'm just laughing. I'm sorry.
I
Oh yes, can Google can videos and photos work the same on Google
Yes,
Photos?
I did. So, not bead related, but I had a video of my grandmother, and it was like 3 iPhones ago, but I had my Google Photos synced. I lost everything on that iPhone, but that video was on Google Photos. So
And I
there may
noticed that
be a
Juliet
setting.
just said
Do you want to turn off the frontal view? Because what I can do is I can come into my iPhone and I can tell you really quick. It's just when I move it, it's going to adjust the view.
you want me on the top view?
Yeah, we can go on the top view because I'm moving this now and I'm going to use this device. So I don't know if we want to cut this off. Okay.
No,
Okay.
that was the wrong device. I should have kept you on the. That's okay. I'm going to keep
No,
you
it wasn't.
on this.
There we go. It was my light that was off, not the.
Oh, I got you.
There we go. Yeah, it was my light.
Juliet had made a comment that she uses iDrive that way. So I think I'm on a PC and I have been able to access my iDrive on my PC as well.
Okay, now I'm not familiar with iDrive. Is that the same as iCloud?
I think I use iCloud.
Yeah, that's what I use. It's called iCloud. It's the Apple Drive.
I had just jumped back and forth between so many platforms that I found the Google a little bit easier to transition to between devices.
And it's also cheaper.
Yeah. And
if you're going to buy more storage, it's a lot less expensive.
Yeah. And I can store way more on it before it makes me pay for additional storage than you can on iPhone. So I'm going to go in here and I want to see in my Google Photos app. And actually, let me do this on the overhead. And let me just see if there's a setting in here. See, so that upper top corner there, that just synced now that I've opened it. So do you see those 2 pictures that we took earlier? Those are on there. So the good thing about this is as soon as I open the app, that synced with the phone and it did that. So I think the problem I'm going to have is because I've already set this up, I'm not going to be able to go backwards and see some of those settings because it's when you initially set up the app. So my husband does not have this. So I think next time what I'll do is just grab his phone and show you and set up a Google Photos for him and walk us through that. Because I'm not seeing anything in here that
there's also a lot of YouTube videos on how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of I want to be able to access my photos quickly, and I'm back on the computer view now. I want to be able to access my photos quickly, and I want to make sure that I have them no matter what platform I'm on. So if I'm on my iPhone, if I'm on my laptop, if I'm on the iPad, if I'm traveling and I only have one of the devices, I just found that Google was a little friendlier because it synced with everything that I set to sync it to. And if you're on your laptop or your desktop and you open Google Photos, there on the top left-hand corner, there is a sync button that you may need to click and let it keep syncing. But if it's been a while since you've synced the actual website of Google Photos, so not an app, it could be downloading hundreds of photos, so it might take some time. So you just want to give it that. I'm looking here.
I also want to add to something Michelle just said, that you may want to set that up to sync only when you're on Wi-Fi, especially if you pay for your data plan.
Yes.
You might want to set that to just sync when you get home and you're on Wi-Fi. So
yep. And you can find that setting in almost all of your apps, or on your iPhone, you go into your cellular data and you choose what uses cellular data and what doesn't. And if you're confused or you can't get in anywhere else, you can always go in there and turn Google Photos off. And that way, the only way it will update is on Wi-Fi. So I'm looking down here. We have Martha Giberson. She says that she has a piece of matte black acrylic that she uses for a dark background, or a piece of neutral beige professional photographer's background paper, and they seem to work great. So that's the same concept. The beige background, that's why my dad recommended gray or neutral. Beige is a good neutral color. So if you have access to professional photographers' background paper, that's always the way to go because that's what they're designed for. But in a pinch, or if your budget is limited, that's why the scrapbook paper, the scrapbook cardstock weight paper works really, really well. And you're pretty much going to have your choice of colors. There's probably at least 5 or 6 solid grays you can get open stock. And then, like I said, if you're looking for a more decorative background, like the wood grain, which is super popular right now in online photography, you'd have some options there as well. So thank you, Martha, for adding that in.
So I'm hearing that my Harbor Freight green tarp is not necessarily the ideal choice, huh?
No. I think that might have other uses, but not for this. That's going to be my official standpoint on that. So I don't know if you guys have any other questions, but I can give you, one of the things I wanted to go over is some of the more problem areas with glass photography. And these don't seem to be solved necessarily by having the right lighting or by having anything like that. Well, maybe I'll take that statement back. They just seem to be a problem in general. And one of the things that I'm referring to is dichro. So,
Lisa wanted to know if you set your iPhone to HDR.
That was a question back there. So yeah. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take a look at this because last time I checked, okay, so let's see here. I'm looking at my, okay, nope, that's the timer. I didn't think mine had the option to change it. Nope, that's that live feature. You don't want that. I don't have an option on mine to change it.
Yeah,
but I
have an older one and a newer phone, and I can change it on both of them.
Okay, and you have iPhones.
Yes.
Okay, I'm in photo mode.
I would just try both because I would think that the higher resolution would be great. Unless you're doing, like if you're doing it for a website, you don't necessarily need high resolution for something you're going to post on the web.
No,
it doesn't stand for high resolution.
So if you look at my screen here, I'm in photo and
hold on. Sorry, I got to get up there.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to take the phone out of the frame there. We'll put a tree bead in here. There you go. I don't know if you can see my screen, but there are absolutely no settings that allow me to change that HDR in here to high definition. I don't know if that's something that changed. So if you have the brand new iPhone Pro, the 12 Pro, that one is the one that has similar features to the Android. It finally caught up in photographic technology. And then in the older phones, you had to have the option because some of the phones weren't optimized yet. I think my iPhone 11 is kind of that middle ground where you don't get a lot of options, but
so I just looked it up and it says that the HDR stands for high dynamic range, which in everyday English simply means a high contrast between the lightest and darkest parts of an image. On a smartphone screen, that means pumping up the brightest on the parts of an image that are meant to be bright while keeping the dark colors dim.
Yeah, which...
So it sounds like if that's on a setting thing and not quite in the camera, that would be a personal preference that you might want to play with.
Yeah, I'm just not seeing it.
Here. It's in the settings. Under settings. It's not on the face of the phone.
Okay, so I'm under settings here. And we're going to go down till we see...
And when you're trying to determine which camera to use, I was telling folks in an earlier tech talk that I use my old Samsung camera when I'm filming my beads because the camera, the rear facing camera on that is really quite good resolution. Yeah. So you can call up the standard specs on your phone or your iPad device, your tablet's devices, and you can find out what kind of resolution you get on them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So she is right. So the HDR is on here, and I have never touched this setting. So my best guess on this is your phone is already going to come, if you have a 8, 10, 11, any of those iPhones, it's going to come preloaded as toggled on, because I haven't ever changed that setting in this phone and it shows up. And it's because it's not like the Android where you can toggle it on and off inside the actual camera app. I would say you probably already have it on if you probably already have it on if you have an iPhone. So, and that's just based on me never having touched this before. So, I apologize. I'm being beckoned again.
Thank you, Michelle.
No, sweetie, no. Okay, please. Yes, go tell your father. Okay, thank you. I apologize, guys. I have my high schooler, and he's apparently needing something, and my husband's right out there in the living room, so who knows. So I'm glad I think we've all kind of learned some things here tonight with that, because I never really messed with too many of the actual settings in that area, so that's kind of good. Okay, so your iPhone 10 has the HDR auto settings as well. That's great. So I have a brand new iPad Pro that I'm actually using as the overhead camera for this event. And it is pretty decent. I was very impressed with the videography portion, being able to film, and everything you're looking at is pretty much the color it's supposed to be. So,
Michelle, I think you would be in a disservice if you don't show people how you just set that up a few minutes ago. Can we share that?
We can. Okay, let's see which one. I got to see which phone has the view right now. Let me see which phone has the view. Okay, it's this one. Okay, so I'm going to step back here. I don't know what view she has it on. So this is my setup for filming. And I don't know if you can see this, but with Kelly's help and assistance, I created a board structure here and some cantilevers to be able to precariously hang the iPad off of that precipice. So this is just for filming. I want to preface that this is not how my setup looks when I'm photographing. This is just so, and I had to pull this guy out so I could have my front view and things like that. When I'm photographing, none of this stuff is out. So don't get scared by that and think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to make that work. That is just so that you guys can see what I'm doing. But I thought this was very ingenuitive. I thank you, Kelly, for helping me adjust this.
No, I think it's important to see this type of thing because first off, there was no expense except in paint to hold off what she was doing here. And it just shows that you don't necessarily have to buy a whole bunch of fancy equipment to get across what you want to get across here. That Michelle, using, artist ingenuity and supplies, she was able to create a way to do this, because a lot of people are intimidated by doing demos or giving demos because they don't have all this professional tech equipment. And I thought you pulled this off really well.
That was me.
With a cutting board and some pans of paint and just, yeah. Nice
and
job.
all I wanted to make sure is my husband's brand new iPad didn't take a nosedive. That's really what it was. And you can really get, it was more rudimentary than this before we really, started playing with it. And even with your photography, that's kind of how I want you to approach it. Like I said, I love that comment about being able to have access to those professional photography paper and things like that. But you don't have to have that. And I think sometimes we get a little bogged down by looking at what we don't have, or, well, of course that person can do that because she has this. And what I really wanted to show you guys was the capability to get those high quality photos really lies in just a few things. And most of them are stuff you already have. You already have your phones. As you can see, none of the options were any extras that you had to pay for. It already comes. You didn't need any additional lenses. And I want to, like I said, I really want to see if we can set up a daytime event, because I really want to show you just how good the quality can be just using your ambient daylight. It does require some editing, some post editing to get it as good as using the daylight bulb setup, but it's actually, by and large, I'd say 90% of my photography. So I use less with these lights and more with the daylight, but because this was an evening event, it was much harder to try to portray that. Now, what I will do is, let me come in here. I'm going to come off of Zoom really quick. If we can go back to that overhead look. And I want to show you some pictures that I took. I'll pull this off screen for just a second while I scroll through. I don't know what's on here. And I took some daylight photographs of some beads. And I used this. This was one of the things I wanted to touch on, was the outdoor photography. So if you look at that picture, you can see, I mean, it was kind of cloudy in the background. I don't know if you can tell. That's not blue sky. That's kind of cloudy. I don't have the best light. But if you want to think about it this way, that was diffused daylight, basically. So,
Michelle, why don't I show that picture on the large screen over here?
Sure.
And if folks want to hang around another 15 to 20 minutes, we can talk about the outdoor stuff, so that next time we meet, she can go right into the apps, if that works.
That's great.
For folks. And if not, it's being recorded.
Okay. Thank you so much for attending, Beth. Thank you. Now the photo is blown up a little bit, so it did lose just a little bit of its original clarity. But if you notice, my ambient light, it wasn't a bright sunshiny day. It wasn't high noon. I think I took this picture about 8 o'clock in the morning. And I look at the way the sunlight was, that foggy sky or the gray sky was actually like diffusing your light source. So I was able to get the spectrum of that daylight without, and I need to figure out how to mute myself on here, or, okay. I have some reverb. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I am going to leave the Zoom meeting on that just so I don't hear that, unfortunately. Okay. So with this lighting, you can see you really get a good feel for the color. And what I love about taking my photos outside like this, I use it a lot for social media. And I use it more for Instagram than I do anything else, because they like to kind of see behind the scenes shots. And that's really what this is. But I also use that table in the background that has the black granite top to it. And I have done, I'd say about 5 to 6% of my photography gets done out there, as long as there's no rain or precipitation or anything. And again, with the ambient light being outdoors and true daylight spectrum, it doesn't matter that the background is a high shine black. I'm usually able to get a pretty decent look on that. And I haven't done that lately because we've had some really bad weather, and I hate being in the middle of a photo shoot just to have to drag everything inside. So that's really why I don't have anything to show for that right now. But the outdoor photography is nice because your phone has something called portrait mode. And your portrait mode allows you to have the background blurred out already, so it's focusing on your, so that it's focusing directly on your subject. So it's kind of nice for people who kind of want a dummy proof way to do that if you have an iPhone. If you have an Android, let's see if I can get it into the frame here. If you haven't, I don't know what I just did here. Okay, if you have an Android and you come in here, I believe it's live focus, and live focus is similar. And if you see, it asks me, I want to see if I can get it back up on the screen. It tells you to step back from your subject. There you go. So it says stay within 3 to 5 feet of your subject. And that is the same as portrait mode on an iPhone. And so it's doing that live focus where it's going to blur your background and only put your subject in. And believe it or not, if you hold your arm out from your body and you're holding beads, or you're stepping back from your workspace, 3 feet's not that big of a distance. So you can still get some pretty good macro by doing it that way. So that's that same feature on both the Android and then the iPhone. If you've never done it before, the iPhone is called portrait mode. And again, you do have some options here. You can change your lighting. That's all very frou-frou stuff. I don't think you'd ever really use it, not for bead photography. That's more, again, for photographing other subjects. But it's telling me to move further away. And as I get further and further away, there we go. It kicks in and I'm out of the frame, so you guys can't see that. Oh yeah. See, iPhone immediately adjusts it back. But again, you want to be about 3 feet back from your subject before it's going to kick in. And then anything behind your subject is going to be blurred out. So again, that's a daylight technique. I don't really use that indoors very much. So there is that. So I don't know. I think I've answered everybody's questions. So if I've missed something, maybe Pop.
I think you have. I'm gonna switch this over to gallery view for the people who are left who just want to unmute. I see a lot of people have their photos turned off. That's fine. So I just want to thank Michelle for coming tonight.
Thank you. I hope I was able to help you guys out if this is something that you're struggling with. If not, I'm glad that you tuned in to just kind of see how I do things and see how my setup works. It's not anything fancy, and yet I have really good results. So I wish everybody the same success so that it's not something that frustrates you.
Well, you certainly gave us a lot to think about. I mean, there's settings on our phone now that we didn't know were there. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's surprised by these settings on my phone that I didn't know was there. So thank you very much for introducing me to my phone.
You're welcome. I would love to get my hands on an iPhone 12 Pro, because that's where you're really going to see some of those same really cool settings. Unfortunately, the teenager is using his right now. So my kids always have better phones than me. I don't know if you guys are like that, but always. So
well, since I'm still using a Samsung 5 to take pictures of my beads with, I feel like I'm way behind the curve on that. But I'm very pleased with the quality of the rear cameras. So,
the rear cameras are fabulous. I mean, I think anything newer than an iPhone, I think my mom at some point last year still had an iPhone 4. I'm not sure how she even got it to work, but she took some pictures of my niece and I was actually kind of shocked that it looked that good.
I think that's one of the things as an artist that I take into consideration now is when I go to buy a phone or a tablet, I start looking at what the resolution of the rear camera is, because that's where I'm going to be taking my pictures. And it was something I never really considered before. I just wanted to be able to log on. And now that I'm using it more as a photo device, that rear camera has become important to me.
Well, and that's really the other thing is, I mean, when you think about the expense that you put into a phone, I mean, you're looking at phones are more expensive than most digital SLR cameras now. And within reason. And I mean, we pretty much always have them on. We have them charged. We have the ability to charge them on the go. We have the ability to kind of drop what we're doing and take a picture. So why not translate that into what you're doing, and be able to get the right things, and then be able to utilize what the photos that you've taken in wherever you are and get work done on the fly or on the go and do that. And it's also kind of nice when we're out and about and we're trying to tell people about what we do, we have good photographs to back it up. Something really quick, you had touched on this, Kelly, just slightly on, when I showed the setup. Let's say one of you guys wants to demo your actual work on the torch. I actually tape an old didymium lens over the camera, and I literally have painter's tape wrapped around wherever, making sure the camera can't see it, but I literally have it taped. And sometimes it's on the front camera, which kind of sits dead center. Sometimes it's on the back. It just depends on my viewpoint. But I have it taped on there, and then people can actually see what you're doing. So sometimes if I'm photographing for Instagram, I'll pop that filter on, and then I'll photograph just the torch flame going, and maybe, you know, one hand in the flame twirling a bead, just so people can kind of see what you do. And that's super important. You could be out somewhere talking to somebody about glass and say, yeah, I'm a hot glass artist and this is what I do, and then show them a picture. And that connection between you telling people what you do and actually showing them ends up, like, light bulb goes on. And I've had people say, oh my gosh, is this something I can do myself? Can I do it at home? How do you find out about this stuff? And then we really kind of continue our art at the same time. Because I don't know about you, I'm finding less and less people that I know of that have even heard of stuff like this.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it seems like lampworking is for some folks, it's like all new again. And I'm going to use that as a little bit of a segue here, Michelle, that to just say how much I appreciate what you did tonight. We have a lot of folks who came to see this. Some are still in the room. We have the combination of two clubs. This is totally a volunteer effort. We didn't go seek Michelle out. She was, you know, had something that she was willing to share. And if the rest of you find that you have an area that you're really good at, that you can share something, it makes it a whole lot easier to find speakers and things when they come from within. So you might not think you know something, but you might be somebody who has used Instagram or Pinterest, or you know how to do a certain something on Facebook, or you know you might have tricks that aren't technological tricks that are still very, very useful to folks. So, you know, we're not just about the technology here. The Tuesday thing is also just about certain techniques. So perhaps you know a way to use your beads. I've had a lot of people ask me the question of, I've made all these things with my, all these beads. Now what do I do with them? I just have boxes and boxes of beads. So we're reaching out for all kinds of tips and tricks and help in that area. And you may have something that you can help guide a direction there. So I'm going to wrap this up for tonight. Michelle, I really appreciate your time, your talent, your effort. And we're going to meet back with you in 2 weeks to talk about the apps for what goes next. And so I'm going to remove the spotlight off Michelle here and just go back to the gallery view so you can see your fans. And just thank you. Thank you so much for tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you guys for tuning in.